All right, ladies, welcome to the February Crunchy Athlete Zoom call. Today we are going to go over reverse dieting. I only have one topic on the docket, mainly because I do anticipate you guys probably asking some questions. And for you that showed up here, I also don't mind if when we go over some of the macro sections, if you want to ask me more specific about yourself, and I can break that down for you with all the calculators that I'm going to show you and how you can do it yourself. Or you can, again, I can do it for you here on the call. So, first off, let's go over what reverse dieting is in the first place. Now, and like why you would ever use it. Reverse dieting is this bit of a newer concept, especially in the women's nutrition space, typically because it's a term used for women who have had a long-term amount of time that have been under eating. And in order to get them to adapt to the proper amount of calories, you have to go through something called reverse dieting. And the main reason why is because you need your metabolism to adapt. So I'll give you a really dramatic example, but it's probably pretty common. And I mean, I'm 30 now, so my grandma is 80 and my mom is in her 50s. So I think about like my mom's age, like those 50-ish year olds. Typically, women have been under eating for a very long time. So, what happens specifically with women, this doesn't happen as much with men. It's a little easier with men. They don't typically have to reverse diet, I would say. But a good example would be like a woman back in the 80s and 90s, or even now, in the early 2000s, maybe they were only eating 1,000 calories, or maybe they were eating only 1,200 calories because of culture at the time, because it was very, fashion forward to be heroin chic, and heroin thin, and women were only eating like an apple for lunch and all these things that we all know about back in the 90s, early 2000s, with the Britney Spears and Paris Hilton and that whole shebang, right? So basically, it's like, okay, that woman finally realized that not only was her health suffering, but her hormones were suffering, probably entering into perimenopause, well, fertility potentially, and then into perimenopause. Women are significantly under eating. And what happens specifically with women is when you undereat for a really long time, your body primitively says, oh my gosh, there is no food around. We are living in a starvation state, not an abundant state. So then, what is the system in your body that is only used, not necessarily to keep you alive, but only for the next generation? And that is your reproductive system. Your reproductive system is not even necessarily outside of your ovaries, because your ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone. Outside of your ovaries, your uterus and reproductive system is only meant to reproduce and to produce the next generation. So from a primitive standpoint, your body goes, "Oh, there's no food around. We are shutting down this extra system that is only hurting us in the long run. We need to take care of ourselves." So then it drastically turns down your metabolism. And for the typical woman who's only eating 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories, she's probably on a massive yo-yo, meaning that she's going to restrict, 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 and then she'll go out with her friends or she'll go to a birthday party and then she'll binge, binge, binge. And it's her body's way of saying, oh my gosh, I need calories now. I need carbohydrates now. And so that's this horrible back and forth cycle of restrict, 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 binge, binge, binge. And what happens then is when you're on the binge, 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 or you're overeating calories, typically carbohydrates, then your body goes, oh my gosh, we never get these. Convert them to fat and store them immediately. And so women then start in their 30s, 40s, and 50s start packing on a lot of excess fat mass because they're on this binge and restrict cycle back and forth and back and forth. And I mentioned earlier this week, that is the yo-yo that a lot of women experience, especially after having children. And so what we need to do is that woman finally realizes, oh my gosh, this is a horrible situation. And she starts working with a nutritionist or a dietitian, and there's something called reverse dieting. So you take somebody who's typically eating 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories, something significantly too low, and you start gradually increasing the calories by some methods say 100 calories, some methods say by 10%. Now, if you're starting at 1,000 calories, that is the same number. It's 100 calories, 10% or 100 calories, right? But let's say you're at 1,500 calories, then obviously that would be 150 calories would be 10%. So you're gradually increasing your calories over the course of 4 to 8 weeks, but you're also meeting that fuel, that newly introduced fuel, with a new stimulus of strength training. Because the idea is the muscle mass increase that you get from strength training and then meeting it with food builds the muscle mass, but then also primitively tells your body, oh my goodness, food is around and I have a stimulus. Let's use that fuel. Let's build the muscle. And muscle is very expensive for your body to maintain. It burns a lot of calories. And then again, primitively, your body says, oh, I can maintain this muscle mass because food is around. Whereas when food is not around, your body will eat away at the muscle mass first. So I know I'm vomiting all of these, facts, but basically then what reverse dieting is you're slowly increasing the calories, slowly increasing your muscle mass through strength training, with the primary focus of increasing your metabolism. Because let's take a woman who has poor body composition. She's carrying a lot of excess fat mass. If I were to take her and she's unhappy with her body composition, but she's only eating 1,200 calories, would it make sense for me to say, we should go in a caloric deficit? Absolutely not, right? Because she's already probably under eating 1,000 calories. So where do you go when someone is already under eating way too many calories, but their body composition is not reflecting that? But the reason why is because females carry the key to the next generation. So when you're under eating, your body shrinks down its metabolism, gets rid of all of its muscle mass, and says, we need to convert all of these calories to fat, store it on because we need to survive. That's what happens. Men typically is very linear. Calories in, calories out. I always say this, women always roll their eyes because they can look at their husband can work out for 5 days and they lose 10 pounds and it's all hunky-dory and merry and great. Okay, awesome. And that's true. They have their own qualms they got to worry with, as men. But in regards to losing weight, they're very linear. Women are not linear. But again, I want us to look at that as a blessing because we carry the key to the next generation. And that is an amazing amount of responsibility and opportunity that we have. But unfortunately, the last 20 to 30 years, we have squandered that. We've totally smashed that idea through the whole, low fat, be very skinny, heroin chic, thin concept. And so hopefully we're kind of coming out of that. So I'm going to pause there. Please, if you have a question, unmute yourself, drop it in the chat. I know I said a lot. So if you have a question about any of that, please ask now, before I keep going. I'm going to take like a 10-second pause. So it might be awkward, but I'm going to drink some water. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, so what does that realistically look like? It realistically looks like someone who's been under eating. We want to improve their body composition. So the first step is to eat more calories, meet that food with a higher stimulus of strength training, build muscle to increase our metabolism. Once your metabolism is running hot, it's a really hot engine. Then from there, you stay at maintenance calories for another 4 to 8 weeks. So where your body levels out, you feel strong, you feel good, you feel comfortable. Then once you're eating at maintenance calories for about 8 weeks, and then you can start going into a deficit. But the reason why that deficit looks different than just the classic woman eating at 1,200 calories is because on the type that I am describing, where you're doing a deficit after you've done the reverse dieting, your metabolism is high. And so the idea is that your body is still signaling, I can be healthy, I have muscle mass. You're eating enough fuel. So for example, let's say we take that woman who's at 1,200 calories, we eventually bring her up to 2,000 calories. And she's very comfortable at 2,000 calories. She's not gaining weight at 2,000 calories. She's maintaining, and she has a lot of muscle mass. Then her deficit will then be 10%. 10% of 2,000 is 200 calories. She drops to 1,800 calories. 1,800 calories is still a lot more than 1,200 calories, right? But her body composition is starting to be a lot healthier. She has a lot more muscle mass on her, and her body is not in a starvation state. It's in an abundance state, meaning that her body isn't freaking out saying, oh, there's no food around, there's no food around. No, we eat, we train. We eat, we train. We eat, we train. And then that's basically how we improve our body composition long term while maintaining our muscle mass. I'll give you a really dramatic example. When I did a mission trip I went to Kenya in 2015. Um, it was kind of a wild situation, but we ended up not having a ton of food when we went there. And for 3 weeks, all I ate was like 3 cups of rice a day. It was like a cup of rice in the morning, cup of rice at lunch, cup of rice at dinner. It was not how the original trip was planned, but that's what ended up happening. And when I got home, what do you think happened to my body composition at the time? I had no muscle mass. I lost every ounce of muscle I felt like I had built before then. Now, that was probably a little dramatic of me to think that, but it is true. I typically have a pretty strong lower body compared to my upper body. And my pants, I remember I put on a pair of jeans, and my mom and I were cracking up because I usually fill out my pants pretty easily, but my dog, classic every time. Every month my dog barks. Sorry. It happens. Hold on. Come here. But my mom was laughing at me because usually my glutes fill out my jeans, but they were just sagging. It was so sad. There was so much extra fabric. But I'll use that as an example. I was significantly malnourished, significantly under eating in calories total. And did I get washboard abs where all of this fat mass just trimmed right off of me? No, it was my muscle mass because I had that in excess, which was great, you know? But at the same time, my body was like, oh, this is like extra meat that does nothing for us. Let's get rid of this and keep you alive. And so that's kind of where just dieting in general is different than reverse dieting. I'm going to take a pause so I can yell at her and ask any questions.
I set an alarm to remember
What's that?
my.
Hi, Monica. I know you're unmuted.
Hi.
I don't know if that was on purpose, but I don't know if
It
you had a
wasn't.
question for me.
I was telling my husband, I was like, I set my alarm for my meeting and I missed it.
Oh, no, thanks for hopping on. Okay, any questions about reverse dieting so far, ladies? I think we're good. I can start screen sharing. Okay. All right, let me start screen sharing. I'm going to show some of the resources I have that I think would be helpful for you guys. Okay. First thing is first. Where are we here? Sorry. Okay, can you guys see this TDEE calculator? Okay, perfect. Okay, this is always where I start. Always where I start. So this is the calculator that I always use, tdeecalculator.net. .net, okay? And I'm just gonna make up a person for us. Okay, so let's say I get a new client. She's a female, she's 35 years old. Let's say she weighs 200 pounds. She is 5'7". Let's make it a little shorter. Let's go 5'5". You will put in your own information here, but whenever you do the TDEE calculator, I always put sedentary because you'll see why on the next page, but always click sedentary. If you don't click sedentary, then the calculations kind of go off a little bit. You don't need to put in your body fat percentage, just click calculate, and then you'll go to this page here. Now, I pretty much only use this website for total calories, okay? Now, let's call her Betty. just to make it easy. Okay. Say Betty's a new client of mine. She's 35, weighs 200 pounds. She's 5'5". So just according to this, 200 pounds at 5'5" is probably, she's probably carrying some excess fat mass there. Okay. Um, but I would say even sedentary, she needs to be eating 1900 calories. That would be technically her maintenance calories in general. That will that will change depending on her body composition. But for the most part, 1900 calories. I guarantee you that if you talk to any 35-year-old woman who's 200 pounds and she's 5'5", and tell her that she needs to be eating 1900 calories, she's going to look at you like you're insane. She's like, oh my gosh, that's going to be way too much food. I already eat too much food. I'm going to eat 1200 calories. And I'm going to say, okay, Betty, we need to do some reverse dieting. So I'm going to bring up my little spreadsheet here. Okay. Okay, so this is typically how I do it. Let's say it's Betty. She weighs 200 pounds, but she would feel really her best at 175. Okay. That would be her best. I'll type in current 200, desires 175. And let's say maintenance is 1900. Current, let's say she eats 1200 calories. Okay. Now, if I were to break down her macronutrients and look at this, I would say eventually I got to get Betty up to 1900 calories, but I need to do that in increments. Let's just go 10%. Let's make it easy. I need to get Betty up to, actually, let's do 100 calories just for even simpler math. But I need to get Betty from 1200 calories up to 1900 calories while also assuming that I'm increasing Betty's strength training. Because if I just increase Betty's calories but didn't increase her output, that probably would just, her body would probably freak out and turn it into fat because she's not necessarily changing her activity level. So what I would say is on week 1, she needs to be eating 1200. Week 2, 1300. Week 3, 14. Week 4, 15. Fill this in really quick. Okay, so it's going to take me about 8 weeks to build Betty up to maintenance calories. Okay, just by increasing 100 calories per week. Now, if I were to break down what those macronutrients would look like, then we'll take it a step further. Okay, so let's take Betty on week 1 doing 1200 calories. I'm going to drop down here just so I can show you guys this. I'm going to go protein, carb, and I'll go like this, fat, carb. We'll start there. Okay. Now, if we're going to use the general rule of thumb of Betty is 200 pounds and she needs to be eating 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight, that means that Betty should be eating 175 grams of protein. Do we think Betty, who is starting off at 1200 calories, can eat 175 grams of protein? Probably not. Typically, the first step of someone who's significantly under eating is going to be 100 grams of protein. So I would put in 100 grams for her on week 1. 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. So that would be 400 calories sitting right there. Okay. The basics for fat for women is going to be 75 to 85 grams of fat. So I'm probably going to give her 75 grams of fat. And there are 9 calories for every 1 gram of fat. So 9 by 75 is 675 calories. Now, if I'm trying to get her to 1200 calories, but have good the proper ratio of things, then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up 400 and 675, which gives me 1075. And I'm going to minus that from 1200, which only gives me 125 calories of carbohydrates. Yikes, that's pretty small, right? Okay. There are 4 calories for every gram of carbohydrate, just like protein. So I would take 125 calories divided by 4. and that gives me only 30 grams of carbs. That's where I would say, oh my goodness, she's going to be starving. 30 grams of carbs is nothing. So I probably would adjust this a little bit. I would go back and fix my math. I'd probably say 50 grams of fat, and then I would redo this here. So let's do it again. 50 grams, 50 times 9, 450 calories of fat. Oops. 450 plus 400 is 950. Minus that from 1200 gives me a leftover of 250 calories I can get from carbs. Divide that by 4. That gives me 62 grams of carbohydrates. I'm going to take a pause and see if anybody has any questions.
Did you already say what the reason was for always choosing sedentary on the TDE?
I did, but I can go over it again. The reason why I click sedentary on the first page is because on the second page, it gives me all of these other options right here. And so I would say if you click sedentary on the front page, typically it'll mess up some of these like BMR rates or some of these back end athlete rates. And I just personally don't like it. I've worked with a lot of other nutritionists and they have done the same. They always click sedentary. So I wish I could give you a better answer than I don't like the math that it uses, but that is basically what I do. And then I kind of gauge depending on where they're at, um, like where I would rate them here on this level right here in this section. Also on this page, I want us to understand you're ignoring this ideal weight. Don't look at that. Okay. This has like been a mind boggle for all of my clients. And I say, you gotta just ignore that part. I never agree with it. Um, so I would just wouldn't pay attention to that. Any other questions so far?
And then is that just specifically with this example of reverse dieting, or is it like if you were using the TDE for trying to figure out your calories for like cutting, would you be doing the same thing using the sedentary setting and all of that?
So what I would say is if anybody is looking to do a cut in general or go into a deficit, you do need to eat at maintenance calories for 4 to 8 weeks before you go into a cut. I would never recommend somebody going into a cut without truly understanding where their maintenance calories are. And so what I would say is if this is me here, I probably would do light exercise just off of like a general guide for most women in this group. I'd probably go off of this number, about 2,200 calories, meaning like your secondary functions, like are you sleeping through the night? Are you maintaining a proper menstrual cycle? How is your mood? How's your libido? Do you have energy to work out? Like all of those are still checking out. Like if those are still good, then that's a pretty good idea that you're in your maintenance calories. If a lot of those start to change, then you're probably sitting in a deficit that's too aggressive or too soon, and you need to sit in your maintenance calories for about 8 weeks, and then you can start slowly trimming. And when you go into that cut, again, you need to cut only by about 10%. You do that for about 4 weeks, then you cut 10% again. And you only do that a cut for maybe 8 to 12 weeks. And then you have to go back up to maintenance calories because if you get too low on your deficit, then again, we're turning down our metabolism, and that's not what we want long term. Um, I know I just spit out a lot at you, but that's just a lot of that goes into a cut specifically. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. Okay, so this is where I would adjust things here. So for Betty, for example, on week 2, I'll do this again, but now I need Betty to be at 1,300 calories, protein, fat, carbs. I need her at 1,300 calories because we're bumping her up for this reverse diet. I'm going to keep her protein at 100, which is still 400 calories. Her fat, I'd probably still keep at 50, mainly being, again, with the assumption that Betty is strength training, and strength training takes carbohydrates. So I probably will keep her fat the same and bump up her carbohydrates. So if I know that I want to bump up by 100 calories, pretty much purely and only carbohydrates, 100 calories will be 25 grams of carbohydrates because it's 4 calories per 1 gram of carb. So from 250 calories, now I'm going 350 calories in carbs, and that's going to be an added 25 grams. So 62 plus 25 is 87 grams of carbs. And that's what I would keep doing. I would just slowly ramp, get Betty up to 1900 calories. Again, assuming that she's strength training, assuming that she's increasing her activity. And slowly what happens is her body goes, oh, food is here. We can maintain muscle mass. We can improve our metabolism. We can increase our metabolism. She's not fasting. She's eating within 60 minutes of waking up. She has a bowel movement within 60 minutes of waking up, and she is eating a lot of her protein surrounding her workouts. Women need a lot of protein significantly within 60 minutes of working out. So those are all things. If Betty was my client, those would be all like those secondary and tertiary items that I would be improving with her. Because if you're taking a woman who's only eating 1,200 calories, my goodness, I guarantee you she probably has a poor relationship with food. She is yo-yo dieted. She probably has a lot of negative connotations to food and exercise. So we're also, peeling back that onion, trying to explain why we're ramping things up. Again, I'll just wait if somebody has some questions. But this is the basics. And if you have questions for yourself or you want me to do it for you, because we've got 11 more minutes, I can do a realistic example. I don't know what keeps popping up there.
So I just plugged mine in. I feel like there's no way I'm eating as little as the base sedentary. So like what do you do when it's like I'm pretty sure I'm eating more than that already?
I would say that if you are logging your calories and you're strength training 4 to 5 days a week, you actually should probably be sitting in around moderate exercise. So I don't know where that is for you, Amy. But again, it's going to depend on how much exercise you're doing, and it's also depending on how much food you're actually eating. Like realistically, have you tracked it? I would say that, Amy, if you're strength training for 4 to 5 days a week, and you're realistically tracking your food, yeah, you're probably sitting in the moderate exercise amount. And I would track your food for 4 weeks. And if you wanted to do a cut, then I would take your calories that you're sitting at moderate exercise. And after 4 weeks, to make sure that you are sitting in true maintenance, then after 4 weeks, I would cut your calories by 100, primarily within your carbohydrates. If you are eating a proper amount of protein, I never would cut your protein, and I very rarely will cut it from fat. But typically, you'll cut those calories, the 100 calories from your carbohydrates, and you'll trim a little bit probably back, 400 to 500 calories for 8 to 12 weeks. And then you will slowly, again, increase it by 10%, get back up to maintenance, and then live in maintenance. And you can do 1 to 2 cuts per year correctly. Because again, we're trying to avoid the yo-yo effect. Does that help, Amy?
Yeah, that's helpful. So I guess my one thing, I'm like, if I'm tracking my food for 4 weeks, then I feel like I'm going to start targeting a certain number. And should that number, if I'm trying, like, because if you're watching it, like try to stay around that moderate exercise level before cutting. Is that what you're saying?
Depending on your activity level.
Yeah.
If you are strength training 4 to 5 days a week and you're getting 10 to 15,000 steps a day, I would typically put you in the moderate exercise category. And again, if you eat within 2,400 calories per day because you've tracked it, and that's generally where you're sitting, then yes, that would be your maintenance. If you're not, if you're exercising 4 to 5 days a week, but you're only eating 1,700 calories, Then you would go into reverse dieting, like I just explained, and you would increase by 100 calories over the course of 4 to 8 weeks. And then you would get to your maintenance calories, which is probably that moderate exercise of 2,400. And then you would do, again, a 10% cut going back down. But it's hard to say, okay, Amy, go eat 2,400 calories right now. Because if your body, if let's say, Amy, you're only eating 1,200 right now, you would gain that in fat mass pretty quickly because you're overeating what your metabolism is used to right now.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of even that out.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Okay,
that.
no problem. Any other questions, ladies? I'll sit on the call, or I can do somebody as an example too, if you want me to. I'll just go ahead. I'll just open it up. If anybody has any other questions, I'm just gonna keep filling in this so you guys can just see the math. I don't know if that's like helpful for you, but I feel like the more examples, the better. Um, if you have questions for me, please let me know. If not, you're welcome to hop off and have a wonderful night. But I will keep going over this just so I can just give a little bit more examples. Um, so I probably here on week 3, let's hope, hopefully, ideally, Betty's getting the hang of eating enough protein. So I'm probably going to bump her protein up to 125 because, again, if her ideal body weight is 175, then we should at least get her up to 150. So we're slowly ramping her up. I'm taking 125, timesing that by 4, puts me at 500 calories. Fat, I'll probably bump, I'd probably keep her fat the same because her calories already went up 100 calories for the protein. So I'm going to keep everything else the same. Keep doing that. Keep it all the same. Boom. That should equal 1,400. Let me do some quick math. That's 1,300. Where did I do my math wrong? Sorry, hold on. Okay, this equals, that's weird. Did somebody catch my math?
Yeah, in week 1, you said 400 plus 450 is 950.
Damn
So I
it.
think that's where you got
I
off by
cursed.
100.
Sorry, ladies. I'm a Christian, I promise, but I did curse. I'm sorry. Oh, did I do it wrong?
Yes, 400 plus 450 is 850. So the week 1 is, I think, is off by 100. Therefore, everything else is off by 100.
Okay. I don't want to waste your time here. You're right. No, you are right. Okay. I hope everyone tracked that even though my math was wrong. Sorry. I'm gonna have to go back and fix that. Geez. Okay, how much time do I have? I have 4 minutes. I'm gonna do this quickly. That makes sense now. Okay. Keeping that's the same, not the same. Okay, we're bumping up here. So this needs to be 450. This will be 112. Then we're going to bump up here, 500, 450. 500, 450. This should be 450. Should be 112. Okay, I think I fixed it. Oh, geez. Okay. Is this making sense to you guys? Perfect. And then I would just keep going and going and going. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would keep building her, hopefully ramping up her protein. And with somebody like this, who probably was under eating her protein pretty significantly, if I get her to 150 grams of protein, her body composition will change significantly already. Um, because um, the protein matched with the strength training is going to create a significantly more muscle mass. And then that will ramp up her metabolism, and that's what we want to get to. She'll set at maintenance calories for 4 to 8 weeks. And then again, we will start to do a 10% cut after that. I know this is like pretty mathy, and thanks for hanging in there with me because apparently I did it all wrong when I was doing it. Okay. All right, I have 2 minutes. I feel like everyone's doing pretty good though. You probably asked your questions. If I miss it, let me know. Oh, sorry, Ashley. I just saw this. If you haven't been eating at a significant calorie deficit, can you assume your metabolism is good and it's okay to eat at a slight deficit to lose fat? I would say, Ashley, that the rule of thumb is that you always have to eat at maintenance. I would track your food diligently for 4 weeks. I do not make any assumptions. When we're talking about slight adjustments of 100 calories, you definitely want to dial in your actual maintenance calories. So I would track your food for 4 weeks and stay diligent within that window, and then eventually start doing your cut. But I would not make an assumption that you're sitting at maintenance before you do the cut. Um, I hope that's helpful. Sorry, Ashley, I just saw that pop up. Okay, I have about a minute and a half left. If there's no parting questions, any last minute questions, then I will send you off to have a great night. Bye, Ruth. Good seeing you. Bye, ladies. Have a wonderful night.